Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my continuation of my book reading of The Whispering Nights. Chapter 9 Morgan and the Stones. The bus was coming into Steeplehampton now. It passed the barn and Miss Applewhite's house. Susie said, "We should go and tell her that Martha's all right." "How can we?" said William. "Morgan's still following us." "What's she doing?" asked Susie worriedly. "She's chasing us, that's what she's doing. Before we were looking for her to find Martha. Now she wants us to find us." The bus stopped outside the pub and the children got off reluctantly, keeping close to people they knew. But the other passengers hurried away to their homes, and soon the streets were empty except for the children and the black rolls. "Come on," said Susie. "We got to get away from her. It's no good going home. She can find us there." They walked down the street, looking unhappily over their shoulders from time to time. The Rolls was following them. They started running, but the big car just went faster. When they reached the last house in the village, they ran up to the door and knocked wildly. Old Mrs. Tompkins opened the door. "Please, can we come in?" cried Susie wildly. "That car is following us. Please let us in." "What car?" said Miss Tompkins, looking out. "That one? But it's just standing there. If you're playing games with me, Susie, I don't think it's at all funny. And I'll tell your mother if you do it again. Now run along home, all of you." The door closed. "I said it was just us against her," said William. "Nobody else is involved." His face was very white. "Let's go into the fields," Susie suggested. "Then she'll have to chase us on foot without the car." They climbed the gate into the nearest field, and it was full of tall golden corn, all the way from the road to the river. "If we go down the river," said William, "we can hide in the bushes there. And then if she doesn't find us and goes away, we can make a circle back to the village." "All right," agreed Susie. "We got to do something." So they started running across the cornfield. After a minute they stopped and looked back. "Oh no," cried William in horror. The Rolls had simply crashed through the gate and was driving right across the field towards them. The children went on running, but it was difficult to run fast through the wet corn. They were moving slowly and heavily, like swimmers, and all the time the car was coming closer. As the Rolls banged over the rough ground, birds flew up in surprise, and there was a line of damaged corn behind it. "Nearly there," gasped William. "Jump into the bushes, down to the water." "I can't go into the water," cried Martha. "I can't swim." But William shouted over his shoulder, "It's all right. I know a hiding place there. It's safe. Jump, Martha, jump." She jumped, shutting her eyes and hearing Susie beside her. They slid down through the bushes towards the water's edge, but suddenly found themselves on a wide rock just above the river. "Get back," said William. And they all pushed themselves to the back of the rock under the thick bushes that grew out from the steep river bank above them. There was a terrible noise over their heads, and then they saw the black shape of a car crashing through the bushes and on down into the river. The water rose high around it and the ground shook. And as this happened, the rainstorm moving across the valley reached the Charm Brook, darkening everything, that the car's last moments were lost in the driving, beating rain. Thunder crashed across the sky, and there was lightning on the car roof. Or was it lightning? Holding each other's trembling hands, they saw it, but afterwards they were not sure. There was light and a hissing sound, and a kind of electricity in the air, and then the car was gone, and they heard thunder again. But there was another noise that was not thunder. It seemed to come from the air, just above the car's resting place. A thin, high crying, which became a scream, and then lost itself in the rain. It was an ugly, evil, crazy sound. When Martha heard it, she cried, "Don't listen. That's what I heard in the night. We mustn't listen." The scream rose again over the river, but the children kept their fingers in their ears, their hearts beating wildly. Then carefully, William took his hands away. The noise had gone. The thunder was more distant, and the rain was falling less heavily. "That's all right, it's gone," he said to the girls. "But Morgan hasn't gone far away. I can still feel her." "That noise was awful," said Martha. "You know?" I'm beginning to remember things she said about the stones. She said it was a bad place. I think she's afraid of them. And last night when I looked out of the window and saw them, I thought they were like an army preparing for battle. "I think you're right," said William. "You know, people call the stones the knights and say they had a battle with an evil queen in the past. Well, I think that was probably Morgan." They sat there on the rock, not noticing their wet clothes and cold feet. They thought of the peaceful Hampden stones, and then of Morgan, with her snake head and inhuman eyes. To all of them came the idea that the stones and Morgan were the opposite sides of things, good against evil. "Let's go to the stones now," suggested Susie. "We must be safe there." The others agreed, and they climbed back into the field. There was no sign of Morgan. The birds were silent, just like before a thunderstorm. The children walked beside the river. It seemed a long way to the stones. "We haven't come the wrong way, have we?" William asked. The fields looked different, with long, rough grass, and there were far more trees than usual. They could not hear any cars or planes or machines anywhere. When they looked back at Steeple Hampden, the roofs of the houses had disappeared, and there was no church. Instead, there were some rough shapes on grassy land, with smoke rising from open fires. Something's awfully wrong, said Martha, frightened. Thunder crashed near them, and it began to rain. Then that terrible scream came down the valley again. Immediately, they put their hands over their ears. "Look!" cried Susie. "There's a kind of road, a rough, wide road, cutting through trees and bushes, that's straight up the hill." "It's the old road to the stones," cried Martha. The scream came again, right over their heads, then stopped. They were running up the old road now. Lightning shone somewhere behind the hill. Martha felt very cold. She could hear a loud, regular beating noise behind her. She and the others looked around at the same time, and they all saw the same thing. Down in the valley, there was a white horse carrying a dark rider, and it was moving fast up the hill behind them. Its heavy feet made the ground under their own feet tremble. They turned and ran as fast as they could, although they were very tired by now, and their breath came in short, painful grasps. But to Martha it seems like the most frightening dream she had ever had. She heard a woman's voice calling her, "Martha!" "No," she shouted back. "No, I'm not coming with you anymore." But her breathless voice only sounded like a whisper, and nobody seemed to hear her. At last they reached the top of the hill, and there, calm and peaceful, were the stones. But the two fallen stones now stood upright, and there was something standing in front of the great central stone inside the circle. Martha gasps. Was it human? Alive? It stepped forward, and they saw it was a woman. She put out a hand to them, calling them to come closer. Lightning shone over the hill for a moment. In that moment, they saw the woman's face. "Miss Applewhite," said Susie. but she wasn't sure. The face was young and welcoming, but there was also something distant and very odd about it. Something they had seen before. And then the light went, and so did the figure. The stones were there, but the circle was empty, and the horse and rider were nearly on top of them. "Come on," shouted William. They ran, and as they threw themselves into the circle, they felt the stones move, making an unbroken wall around the children. Outside, they could hear Morgan's angry scream as the horse's feet beat against the grey wall of stone, but inside, they were safe. They lay in the long grass, covering their faces with their hands, while all around them, the stones fought their violent battle against Morgan. The air was full of terrible crashes and thunder, and screams and bangs, and the ground shook. The battle went on for some time, and once Martha looked between her fingers and saw grey shapes chasing angrily across the sky, lit by lightning. She realized that it was too awful to watch and quickly hid her face again. There was a final evil scream from Morgan which rose into the air, and then was heard no more. William, his eyes closed and his ears ringing with noise, thought, "The stones have won at last." Now the air was silent. The stones stood calmly looking over the valley again, and the children lay on the ground in peace. Perhaps they slept for a while. They seemed to be there for a long time, longer than the battle had lasted. They all returned to consciousness at about the same time. One by one, they sat up. They could see the road from Chipping Ledbury to Steeple Hampden, with its traffic and the distant roof of the village church. They could hear the engine of a plane as it flew above their heads. But was it morning or afternoon? It was impossible to tell. The sun was hidden behind the clouds, and they felt extremely hungry. All around them, the stones stood or lay in their usual places, and there was nothing to show that they had ever moved. The children stared at them, wondering. "I think we better go and find Miss Applewhite," said William. So they went down the hill, their clothes wet and dirty. There was no longer any sign of an old road through the corn. It had completely disappeared. And that was the end of Chapter 9, Morgan and the Stones. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.